TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop. Come on, baby, higher. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for, yes, I'm going to say this, 3 men in a box. Not 2, not 1, but we're back to 3. Q's still on assignment for the next couple of weeks. Nick Hathcote making his ECSI debut. I can't wait for that. And then on the second half hour, Adam Trigger from WagerTalk at Adam Trigger WT. We'll be talking some college hoops. College hoops tips off on Monday. So I guess I got to add my Ken Palm and a couple other websites to the arsenal here. And I know Mr. Grissom's all smiles because he's got Coach Cal this year. Look out, Razorback. Suey! I can't wait. Maybe we can match up against those Yukon Huskies in a friendly game. We'll see there. Shout out to our proud sponsor and partnerships. Of course, that is WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play. Download the app. It's free. Viva Tequila Seltzer. CT Bets. Team Family. Second to none. The East Coast is cuckoo for coconut. Go try one. And of course, Terry Smith, Atlanta Steak and Seafoods. Head on over to Facebook. Introduce yourself. While you're there, head on over to Atlanta Steaks and Seafood website. Promo code this week, Steaks10. That's Steaks10. Get 10% off your full order there at checkout. Order today. You'll be grilling by Sunday or Monday. I promise you. And of course, the man behind the glass, the one and only Mr. Elijah Cox. Busy day here in the network is at 1 o'clock. We have Mr. Sean Alvarez, Mr. Smooth Turn 2, talking Breeders' Cup. Breeders' Cup goes today and tomorrow. And at 3:30 p.m., I will be a guest with Andrew McGinnis at WagerTalk and at McGinnis Picks. So without further ado, let's bring them in, Mr. Matt Grissom and Nick Hathcote. What's up, gents?
What's going on, Jeff?
How are you? Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so psyched to have you on board here. We got a lot of football to talk. I think, honestly, it's a good weekend. I know there's a elimination game next week, which we'll talk about next week, obviously, and that's LSU, Alabama. But there's some tricky spots here for a couple teams that are playing well. They can't look past this week's opponents. Nick, Notre Dame fan, and it's kind of funny because the midshipmen, the previous undefeated midshipmen, all the steam, a number opened at 13 and a half, got as low as 11, came back to around 12 and a half at MetLife. If you look at the past performances, you had to say, uh-oh, and it was an uh-oh. Thoughts about Notre Dame Navy last weekend?
Yeah, that's a tough spot for Notre Dame. I mean, it's either if you beat them, then it's, oh, Navy was overrated. If you lose to them, then you're out of the playoff, and it's, oh, same old Notre Dame chokes a big game. So it was good to see. I mean, that's kind of what happens. Everybody's going to blame Navy for the turnovers. I get it. Some of them were definitely unforced, but that's what happens when you face more speed, like NFL type speed, and not sort of your normal like group of 5 teams. You get rushed, turnovers happen, and Notre Dame took care of business.
They're it's kind of funny. They opened the season in Texas A&M, 3-point dogs, hell of a game. And then you come back home and the schedule's set up perfect. I mean, because that was the game. You have a couple other tough games, but my point is this team called Northern Illinois comes in 28-point underdogs and shocks the world. And since then, though, it's been business as usual. And if you cheat, there's no way in hell a one-loss Notre Dame team is not getting into the Final 12.
I agree. Yeah, and that was ever since that Northern Illinois game, Notre Dame is actually leading the country in winning margin. So they've been taking care of business, blowing everybody out. Riley Leonard finally looks comfortable. At the beginning of the season, he couldn't throw deep balls. He was kind of struggling through the offense and figuring out his reads and everything. So now he's kind of everything's on target. And so like if he plays as well as he has the last few weeks, this team can beat most teams in the country. I wouldn't put him up there with like your Georgia and Oregon and Ohio State and Texas. But I would say I think they're ranked right about where they should be. I think they're somewhere between like the 6th to 10th best team in the country.
Mr. Grissom, how are we today?
Hey, doing well. Taylon Green was the number 1 rated quarterback in Pro Football Focus. Arkansas had an offense this past weekend. Not sure where it was against LSU, but that was good to see. Bobby Petrino effect is in full effect, and we've got a big game on deck too.
Well, we talked last week about your Arkansas. I asked you which we do the points. I had the team total, so I was smiling all the way. You know, I had very I was very confident that they would score early and often. It was a great game for them. You don't get the night game this week, Matt. They give you that high noon special. This Ole Miss team, I have put them on the DNP. They got, I think we cashed 1 team total, and then they got me 2 or 3 times. They play so much grab ass, and you know, a lot of respect to the books right now. They're throwing a 7 out there. You see what the good Arkansas can do. We see what the bad can do. Give me the temperature in Arkansasville.
So interestingly enough, the home team has won this game every year for the last 5 years. Arkansas, they did get the offense going. Jackson Dart has not performed extremely well against Arkansas's defense, and that was a bad defense that he's played against. I think Hudson Clark had a field day in their first matchup. He threw like 3 interceptions to Hudson Clark alone. So I feel good where we're at. The offense, like I said earlier, it is clicking, and the defense, we know it can be good. But here's the problem is every time I've bet against Arkansas, we've won. And I bet on Tennessee, we win. I bet on Arkansas against LSU, we lose. Bet on Mississippi State last week, we win. So I may have to bet Ole Miss out of principle here, but all jokes aside, I do like Arkansas +7 in the hook. It was up last night. I think it is back down to 7. Sam Pittman, we've gone over his trends, 21-10 ATS as a dog. I just really like the Hogs in this spot, but I've got a lot of beef with the scheduling committee here. I guess they were planning on the World Series being played at night, and that's why we don't have a big slate of night games, but this is asinine. I mean, we don't have a game past 8 p.m.
Well, I think we need you on the board, Matt. I mean, you can just, you know, what can't Matt Grissom do?
I don't know. You could ask my wife that. She'd probably give you a laundry list of things. when it comes to sports, I feel like I've got a pretty even level head. But yeah, the primetime games, what we get South Carolina, that should be a good one. But outside of that, the SEC, I don't know. is Tennessee, Kentucky. Is that a night game as well?
Yes, 7:45.
Yeah, but I don't know. No big primetime game, in my opinion.
Well, they did you dirty there, obviously in that game, and then obviously the game of the day is also at high noon. And when we think Penn State, what I think of at least is the whiteout. I mean, there is nothing better in college football. Excuse me, I said basketball, football. That the lights going down, you see James Franklin arm in arm, and the whiteout. I mean, the intimidation factor alone, and just I get chills when I think about that. And here comes Ohio State with one loss now. They could, with a loss here, they could be in that LSU Alabama, and you can't trip up. I mean, I still think a 2-loss Ohio State team will get into the Final 12 if they were to lose, but they're not getting into the Big Ten dance for a championship game with 2 losses. Nick's thoughts on Penn State, Ohio State?
Yeah, I have an under 23.5 in the first half is what I played on this one. I think this is one of those feel each other out type of games. Neither offense has looked very good lately. Let's see if Aller, I believe he's going to play. That's what they said. They said questionable. James Franklin's not going to give anything away, especially how different the 2 quarterbacks are in that system. So, yeah, I took the first half under 23.5. Because let me ask you guys this. Do you know how many throws over 20 yards Penn State has attempted in the first quarter this year?
I would
0. Not once have they even, not a completion over 20 yards, not even an attempt over 20 yards in the first quarter. They are just they just want to play slow and make this their tempo type of game. This is also the best defense that Ohio State's faced. And they're dealing with injuries on the offensive line. Their starting left tackle and their backup left tackle are both out. They're moving their left guard over to tackle. And against this defensive line, that's not a good recipe to score. So I think this is going to be low scoring. I didn't want to mess with the bowl game because I could see one of the teams getting behind. And then once you start airing the ball out, turnovers can happen, pick sixes. So I just want to deal with first half under 23.5, I think is the best way to approach this one.
Matt, any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to win, right? I think Ryan Day he's got an atrocious record against top 5 teams. So does James Franklin, big game James. This is going to be an ugly game. I feel like it's going to benefit Penn State to play it ugly. You want low scoring. I think it's going to be a race to 27, 24, somewhere in that ballpark. Our website has Penn State a short dog, I think plus 1.13. So, I mean, everything would point to take the points with Penn State. I do think it's interesting. If it's plus 3.5, I like it a lot more. But I think 3 is that right number. I could definitely see a 23-20 type game, 27-24, somewhere in that ballpark. So I feel like the odds makers are right on with the number.
Before I get into a couple of the other headliner games, I'm going to throw this out to both of you. I'll start with Matt first. We were talking about Notre Dame's opening game win in Texas A&M. Since then, the Aggies have been cooking with Crisco. Got kind of, taken to the shed in the first half. Coach says not a problem. Quarterback switch, 4 possessions, 4 touchdowns. This A&M team is very dangerous right now. Matt, thoughts on the Aggies?
Yeah, I was down on them coming into the season. I didn't think Connor Weigman was a very good quarterback, and it's kind of proven that Marcel Reed deserves that starting role. They came out guns blazing in the second half. Thankfully, I had A&M last week. But I was down on LSU and A&M. They both come out in game 1, drop it. LSU, of course, losing to USC. Texas A&M losing to Notre Dame. And I thought, okay, here we are. My projection was correct. And then LSU turns it on. Nussmeier looked really good up until that second half against Texas A&M. But this A&M team, they're fiery. I do think they're due for a letdown spot, though. I know Mike Elko's had a lot of success defensively, but the South Carolina team, they are starving for a win. They've had a couple of victories just snatched from them in the last minutes. So I think they could play them tight, especially with that loud crowd in Columbia at a night game. But I mean, it's not going to surprise me if they collapse one more time and lose the game, but I do think they could cover.
Is
Sorry,
that
South
more of
Carolina.
a rooting? Is that more of a rooting interest with your heart, or what's the noggin saying?
No, I mean, there's so much parity in college football this year. You've seen Arkansas upset Tennessee at home. Like, weird things happen in SEC home night games. I would even say that Ole Miss, they shouldn't have lost to LSU, but Death Valley at night, that plays a factor. And I feel like South Carolina is just right there on the cusp of being great. And I know Lenora Sellers is young, but he should be able to move the ball, especially if he can get outside the pocket. I think A&M at the end of the day, they're going to be the better team. Whether or not they can get a win, I feel like it's going to come down to coaching. And I've got to give Elko the nod there at the coaching advantage.
Shout out to Sean Alvarez. Happy BC Friday, gentlemen. I use the term gentleman very loosely, Mr. Dawson. And then he comes back with one great thing about Grissom is that he never bets with his heart. And that's what I had to learn real early here. I always leave my heart and ego at the door, and then hopefully the numbers will speak for themselves there. Nick, speaking of near and dear to your heart, the Vols. Vols got a big game. Oh, should I say a big number next to them today? They host you talk about Jekyll and Hyde teams, the Kentucky Wildcats, a team that got lambasted at home to South Carolina. And then in comes Georgia. They lose 13-12, and they're like, well, hold my beer. The following week, they shocked the world. Yet here, the inconsistency of Nico. Here's a team that a couple weeks ago, I had in my top 5. I mean, with their defense, I mean, second to none here. And their offense was cooking with Crisco. Well, I guess it matters who you play early in the year versus who you play as the season comes. Opened up at 15.5 with a 45.5. Now 17.5 with a 45.5 at the Circa. Good morning to Mr. Benson and Mr. Stevens. Matt Grissom's second home, of course. Nick, thoughts on the Vols?
Yeah, the question in this one and why the number is so high, has Kentucky quit? That's kind of the thing that I'm questioning right now, because their defense was so good at the beginning of the year, but at some point they had to get frustrated with the offense not being able to score. They weren't getting any help. So I think that performance against Auburn was not good. They got blown out by Florida. So that's kind of the question. And then Tennessee comes in riding high. I get they still have Georgia in the future, but I think they kind of figured something out there in the second half of that Bama game. I mean, over 300 yards in just the second half alone. Dylan Sampson had 107 rushing yards in just the second half. So it's one of those, it's home night game. It's a blackout. I think Tennessee takes care of business, but yeah, you can't make me lay a number that high right now, considering Tennessee hasn't scored a point in the first half in all of October. So I'm avoiding everything about this game and just hoping Tennessee wins it.
Matt, 2 big games on the card. Oregon traveling to the big house, and of course the biggest cocktail party in the world, Florida and Georgia, both big numbers. I had Paul Stone on yesterday. I've talked to some other guys here on this network and on some other networks this week on Sports Grid, and with Adam Kaufman, like yourself, on RKO 680 AM Boston. Thoughts on the 2 big dogs, Oregon and Georgia, big numbers. I expect both of them to win. Are you in fear of either one of these games?
I would be more concerned with what Oregon team shows up. If it's the one that showed up the last 3 weeks, Dan Lanning's 3-0 ATS. And I often joke that I don't think he cares about covering numbers. For whatever reason, it is clicking now. But the defense has been playing very well, holding Big Ten opponents to 12.6 points per game. And we know a Michigan offense, they can't score. They are averaging 20.4 points per game in Big Ten play, but we've seen the quarterback situation for Michigan. And I think as long as Oregon's offense is moving the ball at will, which I feel like they can do, I feel like this is Oregon's game to lose and not cover. Oregon offense averaging 34 points per game in Big Ten play. And I just think the Ducks roll here. Sorry, Michigan fans.
And how about the other game, Georgia and Florida? Nick, I'm going to talk to you for 1 second here. We don't have Q here. Q would talk for 10 minutes about the Gators here. Do they have a chance? I mean, it's a big number. I mean, can they keep it close?
No. I'm going to play this at some point. I think it opened at like 17 and a half, I believe. Now it's down to 14 and a half. I'm waiting to see if I get a 14 because that's what I want to play out. I mean, that's where the number's moving. I doubt the books let us get it. We'll see what the price is if I want to buy it down to 14. But no, I think Georgia takes care of business here. They're playing better. I don't think Florida's defense is good enough in the secondary to cause Carson Beck. Like, their issue has been Carson Beck turnovers. I just don't see it in their secondary to really force those turnovers. And then you have DJ Lagway, Florida. That's a freshman quarterback going against a Kirby Smart defense. I don't see how they have much success. So no, I expect a Georgia blowout here.
Matt?
Yeah, this is one that I want no part of. It's a rivalry game, so crazy things happen. I'm trying to look back in our chat to see what Q said because I know he did bet it.
I think it's
I know
I believe.
He's on the under, but he thinks, 14 or 17? I can't remember. He thinks Florida is going to lose, but they may be within that number. If you can get 17 in the hook, I feel like probably go Florida, but I don't know. Georgia has yet to play a complete game and look good doing it. I feel like this could probably be the game where they get it right and put up a Miami-esque type score on this Florida Gators defense. But again, it's a rivalry game. That may not be the case. So I'll probably in-game bet this once I see a couple drives, see how Georgia's defense is playing against Lagway. But pre-flop, no part of it.
Before we take a commercial break and get to some of your picks and leans from both you guys here, Matt, is there any game specifically that intrigues you that you want to talk about or break down a little before we get to your picks?
Yeah, I think this Vanderbilt-Auburn game, it's a really weird line. You've got Auburn -6.5 against a Vandy team that I don't think anybody told Diego Pavia that they're not supposed to be good at football. They're playing really well, and you start asking yourself, okay, if this is any other 5-3 SEC team going on the road, is the number this big? I mean, my power ratings don't have Arkansas and Vanderbilt that far apart, and we saw Arkansas go into the Plains and take care of business. I'm not real sure why the books aren't respecting this Vanderbilt team. I feel like they can get this win outright. The number just does not make sense to me. So, jumping ahead a little bit, I'm on Vanderbilt +7.5. I think the Commodores are legit, and I think they're going to just continue to win games. You look back at the Kentucky line, it was 9.5, and again, I was scratching my head. Why in the world are the books not valuing this Vanderbilt team higher? And Vanderbilt goes out and gets the win. So I feel like they're not very good. Hugh Freeze doesn't have his quarterback of the future with Peyton Thorne. I think Vanderbilt and Clark Lee, they do with Diego Pavia. He's a baller. He beat Auburn at New Mexico State last year, waxed him. I think it was 31-10. And then going back to Hugh Freeze being at Liberty, he lost to Diego Pavia again. I'm not sure if you saw the interview with Hugh Freeze. He said, I'm tired of facing that kid. And I feel like Pavia is just going to continue that magic and get the Commodores a big win on the road. Nick,
any games stick out to you?
Yeah, I want to see what Clemson looks like playing against Louisville. I mean, we saw what second half against Georgia just was awful. Like, they kind of got just breaks beaten off of them. They haven't played a team over 500 since that game. So, they've looked great. Defenses has some question marks. Offenses looked awesome, though. So, let's see what they look like with a team with a pulse. Like, we expect them to still win this game. I believe they're 10.5-point favorites. I'm on their team total. I trust their offense to score against Louisville. Louisville's going to want to make it up tempo. So I'm on Clemson's team total. I believe I got it at 36.5. I think they end up getting to 37, 38, or in the 40s. So most of this, though, like I said, I just want to see what Clemson looks like against a team with a pulse before they get to most likely Miami in that ACC championship game.
I'm glad you brought up Clemson because, again, they looked dead obviously opening game against Georgia, and here the naysayers, Dabo being Dabo, no, if no transfer portal, we don't need him. We groom our own players, and since then they've gotten great quarterback play, they've gotten great defensive play, and offensively they've been a wagon right now. And I worked the home BC football games, and we were Friday night, 40,000 sold out for the Louisville game against BC. And again, a game BC just Bill O'Brien and the BC Eagles start fast and falter. That's what their motto is. And but I like where your eyes are there. It's definitely going to be a fun game. And I appreciate hearing team totals. I'm telling you guys, that's the market to travel. Who the hell cares who wins these games anymore? Just get me that team total and let's turn the page.
Oh, yeah. I have 3 or 4 or 5 every week. You can ask Matt. I'm always on them.
All right.
Yeah,
We're going to go to a
like
quick commercial break here. And when we come back, Nick, I'm going to go to you first with a couple leans, a couple plays that you might have. And then we'll go back to a quick commercial. And, of course, we'll have the Matt. Could be a 4-pack, 6-pack. By the end of the show, it could end up being a 12-pack. We never know what we're getting for Grissom, but who knows? Elijah, quick commercial break. When we come back, Nick's picks on his
TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
All right, Nick, the stage is yours.
Yeah, I'll just start first with I'm on Vandy with Matt. I got them at plus 7.5. I actually split units. So I put 0.7 units on the plus 7.5 and 0.3 units on their plus 250 money line. I think if Auburn's as bad as we think and Vandy's plays like they have been playing, I don't see why they can't win this outright. So I'll kind of help myself a little bit and not bet the entire thing on the money line. But yeah, I think they keep this close. I also love Iowa this week at home against a Wisconsin team who just got beat up by Penn State. That's a tough rebound. You have Penn State at home. You kind of play great in the first half, and then kind of the wheels fall off. So now you have to travel to Kinnick Stadium, where Iowa just does not lose in November. It's going to be chilly. They don't lose. Caden McNamara is actually out for this game, but I like Brendan Sullivan as a better fit for them anyways at quarterback. He gives a little bit more mobility, helps their rushing game, which I believe is already 3rd in the Big Ten. So I think that's just going to make it even better. And this isn't your normal Wisconsin rush defense. They're 14th in the Big Ten in rush yards given up per game, and they're 15th in rush yards or rush attempts given up. So yeah, I love Iowa here. I got it 2.5. Definitely still played at 3. This is the Kinnick factor late in the season. Wisconsin beat up. And then another one I'm on Memphis -7. Memphis kind of hiding in the shadows a little bit for that group of 5 possible team. If Boise State slips up, you could say Tulane's there, Memphis is there. They're still playing for something. So they're only -7 against UTSA this week, who's 3-5 on the year, and they can't stop anybody. They just gave up, I believe, 56 to Tulsa last week. So I expect this Memphis team to kind of run away with this one. It's my best bet, like our show that we're doing today at 4:30. It's my best bet of the entire week. So Memphis -7 against UTSA. I think they blow them out because they have something to play for, and they need some extra bonus points in the eyes of the committee.
It's funny, Paul Stone loves the over in that game, and you talked about Memphis you talked the Tulsa game. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 35-7, and all of a sudden, hold my beer, and there was like 40 unanswered point. I mean, that game was crazy there. Great job there, Nick. Elijah, hit it, please. All right, Mr. Grissom, the stage is yours.
All right, I've talked about them several times already, but Vanderbilt plus 7.5, and then I'm also on Arkansas plus 7.5. Also, really like the under in that game, 53.5. Pittman 21-10 ATS. The home teams won in the last 5 matchups in this one. Ole Miss and Arkansas are combined 8-1 to the under in SEC games. I like this one to go under. Oregon minus 15, landing 3-0 ATS in the last 3. Like I talked about the defense, I just don't see how Michigan puts up points. I think offense-wise, you've got to give the nod to Oregon in a big way. I feel like Dylan Gabriel's Heisman chances are back on the table here as he's the shortest shot. I don't think Lanning lets up. I feel like they're going to just score at will. And then I like Tennessee minus 16.5. That number may have moved off. I think it just slowly crept up from, I think it opened minus 14.5. But I also like the under in that one, 45.5. Again, these two teams combined 9-1 to the under in SEC games. Kentucky's offense is abysmal, averaging 13.5 points per game with the number 83 ranked offensive success rate. It's not very good. You can look at our website at collegefootballinsiders.com and see that. But Tennessee's number 1 in defensive EPA, number 5 in defensive success rate. Much like Michigan, I don't see how this Kentucky team is going to be able to score points. So Oregon, Tennessee, Arkansas, Vandy on the spread, and then unders in Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, Kentucky for a 6-pack.
Well, the 6-pack spot on with the Viva 6. Oh, actually, no, the Atlanta Steak and Seafood 6-ounce steaks. Get it? Steaks. Great job by both of you gentlemen. Nick, how we always end this segment is tell everyone where they can find all your work on social media. The scroll has been going the whole time, of course, and what time the show goes live today.
Yeah, in half coat 413 on X is the best way to find me. It's where I do most of kind of our gambling talk for the show and everything with NCAA Insiders. Show today's at 4:30. Yeah, feel free to join. Talk in the chat. We like to kind of interact with the chat a little bit. So, yeah, hopefully Q's there, Smitty's there, and just another show where you'll hear us talk about college football.
Mr. Grissom.
At Grissom on X. Check out the website at collegefootballinsiders.com. Parker and Nick have done a great job with it. And then I've got one more I'll leave you because I like to bet the first quarter totals. Georgia State taking on your UConn Huskies. Georgia State is second to last in scoring in the first quarter. They're averaging 1.9 points per game. They're taking on a UConn team that's averaging a little short of a touchdown at 6.8. So I like under 9.5. You can get it at plus money right now. I think I played it at plus 110. So if you can get the 10, love it even more. But the 9.5 at plus money, I'll take that too. I think this is a 7-0 type game going into the second quarter.
Go follow Matt, of course, on Grissom on X. Nick at Nick Hatcoat 413. Gentlemen, great spot. Best of luck in cashing some tickets this weekend. Nick, an amazing debut. Can't wait to have you back next week. We'll be tuning in at 4:30 for your live podcast. Enjoy yourselves. Behave, all right, gentlemen?
Thanks for having us on, Jeff.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Jeff.
Thank you. Elijah, commercial break. When we're back, Adam Trigger talking some college. Oops. See you soon.
Jared, hey, we're going to need you to tone it down with the Summer Friday thing, okay?
What are you talking about?
Well, for one, it's not summer anymore.
Oh, really?
Coconut. Also, who is this?
I'm the caddy.
Oh, he's my intern.
Sorry, intern. I'm his intern.
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
No golfing in the office, okay? Summer Fridays are over. You can keep the Hawaiian shirt, but the rest of this stuff, all right? Are you grilling?
Oh, yeah. Did you want a burger or a hot dog?
No, grilling in the office.
That's a good point. We should take this outside.
No, that don't. You put that right back down.
Yo, it's all in the hips.
Oh, dude, come on, we gotta go. Let's go.
We switch from The gridiron, of course, to the hardwood. We are just 3 days away from tip-off 2024-2025 season. I see the teams are already out there recruiting. UConn heading to Australia to grab another recruit. Our guest here is going to be chomping at the bit as the season's getting ready. As I got my Ken Palm to the right, I got another spreadsheet to the left. Let's bring him on, the one and only Mr. Adam Trigger. What's up, Adam?
What's going on, Jeff? Yeah, we're 3 days away and we finally get to talk some games. So, it's been fun doing the future stuff. Go back and watch the last couple Friday shows if you're looking for some futures bets. But we finally have some matchups that we can. No lines out yet, but I think at this point we know how baked into the number Ken Palm is. So I think we can look at there and probably figure out what the number is going to open or going to end up at.
Yeah, and when I got your email, of course, that's exactly what I did. And we'll get to those three games that you want to break down. As we get closer to Monday, and you're going to wake up Monday morning and you're going to see a list of games a mile long, the November games especially is to get your feet wet. A lot of the iron plays the softer schools, some of the softer schools getting their checks and their feet wet, and it's good for both sides to get a feel, to get combinations going. What are your initial thoughts, especially with hoops starting obviously at the start of not in November, not mid to late November like it used to be?
So my thoughts on like early season college basketball, if you go back 10, let's say 10, 15 years, really probably 15 years, well, even the last decade, like pre-transfer portal, pre-NIL. If you did your homework and you were super prepared, it was basically a guarantee that you were going to make money betting college hoops in November and December. It was like any handicapper, that was the time they waited for, because there's let's just facts, right, Jeff? There's 364 Division I college basketball teams. It's virtually impossible for the books to with all that they have going on with football, to appropriately price 364 teams. That hasn't changed, but what's changed is the uncertainty up and down all of college basketball. New faces, new places, so much moving around, NIL transfer portal. It's made this November and December window much more difficult to win, much more random. Then throw in the fact that the NCAA has sort of watered down the stock they put in these November and December games. You have coaches experimenting. Like it makes it a lot tougher to win. So my advice to anyone betting college hoops with 100+ games on Monday, be way more selective than you would be in even like January. It's not the same as it used to be. I know really good handicappers that have got absolutely smoked in November and December the last couple of years. I think I've had to I think last year at the end of December, I was right around even. 2 years ago, I had to battle back from like a pretty big hole. Ended up having one of my better seasons in memory, but still would have been that much better had I not dug myself a hole in November and December. So just, I'm going to be super selective out of the gate. I'm going to want to bet a whole bunch of stuff on Monday. I've been looking at these games for 3 weeks, but remember, there's going to be a lot of teams that are stepping on the floor for the first time. It's a long season. Watch and learn a little bit is my best advice.
I'm going to take us back to the COVID year. The world stops 18 months. We had to keep going, get out of our comfort zone. The market, with the states adding into the legalization of sports wagering and the DraftKings, FanDuel, all these casinos and sportsbooks being readily available in your palm of your hand. As you said, 150 games, that means there's 150 sides. There's 150 totals. There's first half plays. There's second half plays where you got 12 minutes to figure it out. Now there's in-game plays. Well, we have a source that we get information from, and he's been amazing on the totals. Now, in most sports, you don't run to the window and bet the overs, and you try not to bet the favorites because that's what the public does, Adam. But I found a hole 2 years ago. There was about 8 to 10 to sometimes 12-point differentials from the total they were unders. And I'm running to the window hitting 3, 4, 5 overs and going 4-1, 5-1. And I had the greatest, let's say, 8-9 week run until the market caught up. Now I'm more of a team total guy where again, I can take the over under and then I can break it down to the team total and I can find some little chinks in the armor. How do you peel the onion back, Adam?
Well, I mean, for me, it's probably different than some other people. I go to about 30 games a year. I intertwine like 25 to 30 games. I'm trying to hit every Division I venue over the course of like the next decade. So I started 2 years ago. This will be my third year. I think I'm at like 45 different venues. I try to get to about 30 games a year. That way, I try to target teams that I have kind of a strong opinion on, because I like to see them play in person. And then the other thing I think is super important, Jeff, the books have to put numbers out on 360 plus teams. You do not need to be an expert on 360 plus teams. In fact, like I would create like a little stable of teams for yourself, right? Like if I'm talking to someone that's never done this, how do I bet college basketball? Well, pick like 15 teams, become an expert on those 15 teams. Because while the books are pricing out 360, you only have to be an expert on 15. Chances are that, like, especially if you're following them closely, beat reporters, local intel, you're going to be ahead of the books in a lot of cases. I follow teams right in my backyard. I'm in Central New York. I'm usually ahead of the curve on like a Colgate, as opposed to like, when the books get around to figuring out what's going on with Colgate. It's just, and it's really nothing special. It's just, there's so many teams, there's so much information out there. The smaller you can make it for yourself, I really believe the better you're going to do.
Yeah, and I love that thought process. And I talk to a lot of experts here. And if you want to get into the NCAA hoops market, they suggest finding a conference. Find a conference,
Yep.
and then start really focusing on them, because on social media, WagerTalk, wherever someone's giving out information, and I say this open-heartedly, Michigan is playing Duke, and you got 1,000 people on Michigan, and here's the 1,000 reasons. You got 1,000 people on Duke, here's the reasons. When you're talking Fairfield and Iona, that no one cares about. And at the end of the day, Adam, they all cash the same. And I love where your eyes are.
Well, Jeff, just look at opening night, right? Like, look at the games I sent you that I wanted to chat about today. We're not talking about Baylor, Gonzaga, Ohio State, Texas A&M, Missouri, Memphis. It's not that those aren't, and the other thing is, it's not that you can't find edges in bigger games. It's just they're going to be fewer and farther between because of what you said. You have, the market is not going to get, the books are not going to get Baylor, Gonzaga wrong with like 4 weeks to create a number, then put a number out. It's going to get bet to where it's supposed to be. Where you're going to be able to find value is the smaller conferences, the games that are ignored. So yeah, if you live in, if you're up in, or you're down in Sunbelt territory, that's a great league to follow, right? The smaller one, they're going to provide more value. And as you said, the tickets cash the same. So why would we not try to give ourselves a bigger edge? That's kind of how I look at college hoop.
Well, you sent us 3 games here. I'm going off of KenPom, okay? And then I'm going to give you the soft lob here. You talked Greensboro and Florida Gulf Coast. From KenPom, I have come up with Greensboro -5. Mr. KenPom himself has a 71-66 final score.
Yeah, so this is a scenario where I'm hoping the line is a little bit higher. So I'm looking to play against Greensboro. If you go back to last week, we talked a little bit about the SoCon conference and in relation to some futures. And one of the points I said was, well, I'm willing to target Chattanooga because Greensboro is a team that I want to like throw out of that like top 3 or 4. That's sort of where they've been the last few years. Last year, UNC Greensboro had probably their best team under Mike Jones. Of course, this was Wes Miller. He leaves, Mike Jones takes over. And something that's been sort of a constant with Greensboro for the last decade, from the Miller teams to the last 3 years has been an elite defensive team. Every year, they're one of the top defensive teams in the SoCon. They defend the rim well. They press. They have a ton of athletes that are tremendous defenders. Last year, they could really shoot it, and that's why they outperformed so much last year. They had Keyshawn and Kobe Langley and Donovan Atwell, who all were prolific three-point shooters. So you had this team that was built on great defense, and suddenly they hit threes at a top 50 clip in the nation last year, something that I don't even think they expected to excel that much at, and that really gave them an extra sort of level. Suddenly Greensboro wasn't a team that was going to have to grind you out 63-61. They could score, and then they also had Mikel. You look at so many names, Mikel Brown Jones. You start to look at so many names, Jeff, and you forget him. But he heads to Ole Miss. He was their post presence, elite defender, great athlete, but also could score in the paint. That's where I think Greensboro might take a step back this year. The guys they brought in are good players. Kenyon Giles from Radford, Ronald Polite from George Mason. That's going to be their new backcourt. But both of those guys were sub 30% three-point shooters last year. So even with Atwell still there, I think they lose some of that three-point shooting that they had with the Langley brothers. And then you have Brown Jones is just an irreplaceable all-conference type of player. There's a reason he's now at Ole Miss. That's the league he belongs in. And what's going to replace him in the front court? Again, they're super athletic defensively. They fit the way Mike Jones wants to play, but I don't think they score like the players they had last year. So now you start to talk about them on opening night, laying 6 points. Admittedly, I don't really know what to expect out of Florida Gulf Coast. I do know that I really like Pat Chambers for the couple years he was at BU. My sister was a student there at the time, and those were awesome BU teams. He ends up getting the Penn State job where he kind of was mediocre for a decade. I thought going back to the mid-major ranks, he was going to really excel. And oddly enough, he hasn't. His first 2 years at Florida Gulf Coast have been underwhelming. But it's an odd sort of thing that he's got going because these Florida Gulf Coast teams seem to do extremely well early. If you go back last year, they took Indiana to the wire on opening night. In December, they knocked off Florida Atlantic, who I believe was undefeated at the time, top 10 team. They lose as a 25-point favorite against Florida Gulf Coast. 2 years ago, opening night, they beat USC. So these are teams, for whatever reason, that have played really well out of the gate for Pat Chambers and not as good in conference play. But year 3 for Chambers, I do think that this team is going to be a little bit better than they were the last couple of years. They have Keyshawn Kelman is going to be one of the better players in the Atlantic Sun this year. So I'll be looking to fade Greensboro. And I think if I get 6 or better, that this might end up on my card. Again, I don't know enough about Florida Gulf Coast, but I do know that I see Greensboro taking a step back offensively. And for that reason, I just think that you've got to like your chances catching what I do think is a little bit of an inflated number for Greensboro on opening night.
When you dive into these games here now, whether it's 1%, 3%, 5%, however you break down these games, when you're on the dogs, Adam, do you suggest that you also, as our good friend and colleague Kelly Stewart say, sprinkling a little beer and pizza money on the money line?
No, that's not really my style. I would rather just I'd rather just play it for the full unit or so on the spread. Reason being, I think the hold a lot of times is bigger on the money line. So you feel okay, well, if this team wins outright, you're getting a little extra. But I think if you bet at the right number and you're assessing line value, right? I just think a lot of times you give too much of that up, especially in those close spreads, right? When you're plus 2.5, but then it's you're taking a plus 115 money line. For me, I'd rather have the 2.5 points. I'd rather just make my full bet on whatever the spread is. So in this case, if it ends up being 6, my full bet is going to be on 6. I'm not going to give up any to play the money line. That's just my style. I'd be curious. I don't know if, especially with college basketball, like there's so much variance that it's going to be very different person to person. But my style is if I'm playing Florida Gulf Coast +6, I'm just taking the 6 points and letting the chips fall where they may.
Second game on the docket, Columbia versus Loyola, Maryland. My numbers, Ken Palm's numbers also has Columbia -6 with a 76-70 final, Adam.
Yeah, so this is actually one I didn't initially intend to come on and talk about this, but the Ken Palm number was shocking to me because my numbers make Columbia like quite a bigger favorite here. And so that's why I chose this game to talk about, because I really just want to talk about Columbia and what I think about them this year. So you made a point to say, COVID earlier this year really just changed a lot of stuff, right? And what a lot of people forget, the Ivy League canceled their season that year. They were just like, you know what? We're not even going to play, right? That was the year that the tournament ended up in the bubble in Indianapolis, and a lot of teams played and fans slowly came back. And the Ivy League was like, we'll see you guys in 2022. We're not even going to play. Now, teams like Princeton and Yale and some of the bigger sort of brand name programs have bounced back just fine, right? Like, especially Princeton and Yale. 2 years ago, Princeton's in the Sweet 16. Last year, Yale wins a game in the tournament. But the bottom of the Ivy is still somewhat recovering from that. The Dartmouths, the Columbias, Harvard hasn't been the same really since that COVID sort of derailment. And Columbia specifically was a team that pretty much had to start from scratch. You go back to that 2022 season, which would have been the first year after COVID. They were arguably the worst team in the country for early on. I would say they maybe came around a little bit toward the end of the season, but 4-22, one of the worst teams in the nation. And then 2 years, but again, the point needs to be made that it was almost all freshmen, pretty much starting from scratch. 2 years ago, 7-22. Last year, 13-14. And last year, I really felt like if you watch Columbia play, you were like, okay, now it's all sophomores and juniors. This looks like a team that can hang with some of the top teams in the Ivy on a given night. And now you have all juniors and seniors. And now you have Rubio De La Rosa and Avery Brown, two of the better players in the league. So suddenly you're now in like year 3 of this reboot for Columbia. You've got a very competitive team. They're returning, I believe they're top 5 nationally, Jeff, in minutes returned. So, something we don't see enough of in college hoop anymore with the transfer portal and the NIL. There's continuity. You don't see that a lot, right? Like to me, that's very important. I like, especially in the early going, I like the target teams that are bringing almost everyone back. And you have to go to some of the smaller leagues to find it. You're just not finding it in Power Fives anymore with all of the NIL transfer portal and moving around. So you have a team like Columbia, who's virtually everyone back, started to really, in my opinion, make the jump toward the end of last year. And you're up against a Loyola team that's been really bad for like a decade. I mean, this is a team that's been, ever since they moved to the Patriot League, they've been at the middle to bottom of the league. No one has been able to win here. So they're going to bring a guy in Josh Leffler in as the head coach. He did really well in D3 at Johns Hopkins, went to Cincinnati to be an assistant for a year. But, I don't think they're going to be worse than last year per se, but I do think it could take some time. I do think that he's going to put in a new system. There might be some growing pains November and December. You lose Dion Perry, who single-handedly sort of kept Loyola competitive last year, one of the highest usage players in the Patriot League. So without him, toward the end of the year, he got hurt. Loyola finished 1-4 their final 5 games last year without him, got just demolished twice. Bucknell blew them out. Navy blew them out in the Patriot League tournament. So, a team like Columbia, you don't really want to lay 5 or 6 on the road with them. Like that's not really the where I want Columbia, Jeff. Like I prefer them as an underdog or like just having to win. But this looks like a pretty big disparity in where these two teams are at right now. Reitz Arena, very little home court edge. They get 600-700 people a game in that building. I wouldn't be surprised if Columbia blew them out. My number was coming out closer to 9 9.5 here. So if this opens in like the 5.5, 6 range, I might have to lay it with Columbia. That number seems quite low, based on what Ken Palm's putting out.
And the last game you would like to discuss from Ken Palm here, Princeton Iona. Numbers break down to Princeton minus 14, 80-66 final on Ken Palm.
Yeah, so I'll go quicker on this one. We talked about Princeton extensively 2 weeks ago. And actually, if you followed along, I think on this show, we talked about Princeton to win the Ivy at plus 150. I'm pretty sure that's up in like the minus 170, minus 180 range right now, where it should be. I make them like minus 300 to win the Ivy. So like if you still get minus 150, that's a good bet. But that's the Ivy League coming. That's not till January, February. This line surprised me because Iona has a lot of very good talent. Now, Tobin Anderson's in his second year. We know Tobin Anderson from the Fairleigh Dickinson crazy upset of Purdue, put his name on the map, got the Iona job as Pertino left, and had a really bad year last year, which really wasn't entirely his fault. A lot of it had to do with injuries, the roster. I'm willing to just throw that year away. And it looks, from the looks of it, he's willing to throw that year away as well, because this is a completely new roster. Now, I don't love betting on that out of the gate, but I see a lot of talented names on that roster. And I know Tobin Anderson is a very talented coach. What I've heard from Iona practices so far has been positive. So I'm looking at this and saying Princeton minus 15 seems like an awful lot of points for this game. Like, I love Princeton. I think they're going to be very good this year. But the one criticism I have of this Princeton team is outside of their starting five, their bench is all freshmen. It's very young, very unproven. And this goes back to the point I wanted to make, or we made earlier, about coaching, November, December. Some of these games, the NCAA has kind of screwed the mid-majors to the point where they pretty much need to win their league to get into the NCAA tournament at this point. They're so heavily favoring, Jeff, the big names from the bigger conferences, that November and December for mid-majors is more about just figuring out what you have. And I honestly think Mitch Henderson might coach like that a little bit in the early going in a game like this. Like, I think he's going to get his freshman minutes. He's got to figure out who number 6, number 7, and number 8 is on this team in case one of these starting 5 goes down, because otherwise you're not going to win in March. And the only thing that matters is winning your league and winning in March. It's so hard for a team like Princeton to get an auto bid at this point that it makes more sense to experiment and make sure that you can figure out who your rotation is. So in a game like this, when you're a 15-point favorite for Princeton, I think Henderson's going to, he's going to experiment a little bit, especially if he finds himself ahead by double digits in this game. Iona's got a ton of talent. We don't know what it's going to look like on the floor because all of these players just showed up at campus over the summer. But Tobin Anderson's a very good coach. He plays a lot of defense. That defense presses. They have athletes. They have length. My gut tells me Iona's probably going to be better than people expect. And Princeton, for as good as they are, I could see them experimenting with their rotation a little bit in these early games, especially as a big favorite. So 14 or 15 points seems like an awful lot there for me, Jeff. I lean toward the underdog.
NCAA tips off on Monday. Shall I ask where you will be Monday?
I don't know yet. So I do know I'm heading down to Annapolis next Friday to go to it's a doubleheader. It's a Navy home game against Harvard, but VCU and BC are playing there. I will be attending a game on Monday. I just haven't decided which one. There's a good chance it will be Iona-Princeton. That's about a 4-hour drive for me. There's a couple others that are in striking distance, like Yale-Quinnipiac's a possibility. Albany-Army's a possibility. Maybe Lipscomb-Duquesne. That's a little bit longer drive and later start time, but I'll be somewhere in the Northeast at a game. If all else fails, I'll go to the Siena game. They're at home against Brown. First game for Jerry McNamara. Of course, I went to Siena. I'll probably get crucified for having a Fairfield hoodie on or sweatshirt on if one of my classmates saw this spot right here. But I'm excited about Jerry as the head coach of Siena. So probably one of those 5 games. We'll see.
Well, we'll be following through our eyes on your timeline to see exactly where you are. Can't wait there. And obviously, we'll have you back next Friday. Now, again, during your tours here of duty to these games, maybe we'll have a live remote or something. Or if we have to move you in early, we'll make it happen. How's that
I
sound,
think
Adam?
so. I think I'll be good for our spot next Friday because my sister's house is right on the right on my drive to Annapolis, and I've got to stop in and see my new nephew. Well, it's a few months old at this point, so I'll likely do my spot from her house. So I'll be with you guys next week, one way or the other.
Adam, the scroller's been going the whole time, but as we always end our show, they know where to follow you on X at Adam Trigger WT, but tell them what you got to offer at WagerTalk as well.
Yeah, all of my picks all year long, always at WagerTalk. But I give out a ton for free. I post a lot of free stuff. If you ever want, if you need an opinion on a game, I answer almost every DM. So feel free to hit me up on Twitter. My messages are open at Adam Trigger WT. I'm doing a lot on TikTok. Honestly, I'll probably turn your request into a TikTok video. I'm always looking for content to post on there. And then I'm on Instagram as well because Kelly Stewart is always in my ear. You got to do more on Instagram. Not my favorite app, but I'm trying to post more on there as well. The same handle for all of them at Adam Trigger WT, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and I'm always around. So just shoot me a message. If you need a insight on a game, just let me know. I'll answer you.
Have a great day. Enjoy yourself. Tip-off's almost here. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me. We'll see you guys soon.
All right, take care. Elijah, quick commercial break, and then we'll wrap it up.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, come on, baby, higher. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop.
So much to process there in this regards. We're week 10 in college football, so we have Matt Grissom on, we have the debut of Nick on, and you know, we're so trained in the brain here because we've been following these football teams and conferences now since July, August, and of course for the last 10 weeks here. Now we're trying to slide into college hoops, and you're going to wake up Monday morning and you're going to see there's an NFL game on, and you're going to be hopefully counting your winnings from over the weekend or week between NHL, between NBA, between college football, between NFL football. And then you're going to look at your spreadsheets or wherever you follow, and you're going to see there's like 150 college basketball games on Monday. Everyone's playing. And my point is, you can't just dive in and you get caught up in social media, and everyone's talking about the headliner games, the Texas, the Gonzagas, the Kansas, and they're on TV. You want to play them. Well, as Adam says, and I have said, as long as the cows come home, their numbers are too tight, guys. It's like the Penn State-Ohio State game. It's 3.5. It's 3. Is Aller playing? Is Aller not playing? It's at 12 o'clock. Grab a bagel with cream cheese. Grab a mimosa. Grab your pom-poms. Find another game. You don't need to be involved. If you got an edge, God bless you. I don't, at least in that game. So my point is, if you want to dive into college hoops, find a conference. If you're a UConn fan, dive into the Big East. If you're a Duke fan, dive into the ACC. Concentrate on the conference and go from there. It has been an amazing show. I am super stoked to have the NCAA Insiders, to have Adam on. College football, college basketball, before you know it, college baseball. 1 o'clock, Mr. Smooth, the Breeders' Cup, hashtag Giddy Up, is here today and tomorrow. And we'll have Sean on to break down the race today, and of course the classic for tomorrow. Elijah, Amazing work. We couldn't do it without you. Shout out to Mr. Saylor, everyone else that was watching, Sean Alvarez, and the rest of that crew. Guys, if you haven't already, jump on over to YouTube. Subscribe. It's free at East Coast Sports Investors. Till then, we'll see you in less than an hour. We'll be back. See you soon.